too much today. So, first item on the agenda, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item is the minutes of the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee meeting held Monday, December 14th. Recommendations to approve those minutes.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 2.
Item 2 concerns a Phase 1 zoning text amendment report to all RM apartment zones and RT2 townhouse zones. The recommendations to endorse the public consultation plan for the 2-phase apartment zones and the R2 townhouse zone zoning bylaw text amendment process.
Okay, thank you. I would like staff, I spoke to Mr. McIntyre, I would like staff to come forward. I think this is an important thing for us to talk about. So if staff would come forward and just give us a small presentation, please.
Madam Chair, yes, there's a number of items on this afternoon's agenda, so that we have several staff that will speak to each in turn.
Thank you. You're looking lovely today, I think.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On that note, the intent with this particular zoning bylaw text amendment is just to get Council's endorsement on the public consultation process. This is pretty much akin to some of the other zoning bylaw text amendments that development planning has been working on over the course of the past year with regard to addressing some outstanding issues with some of our zones, in particular these apartment zones that have a number of issues associated with them, one of them being the density regulations. It's been a long time since we've gone in and taken a hard look at these zones. We're getting feedback from the development community that there are some aspects of it which make it very difficult to implement and makes sense for us, given the context of our ongoing desire to improve application process and be a little bit more responsive to marketability of zones, that it's time for us to look at these zones as well. So the intent here is to make some changes, also to address some administrative issues with regard to lot coverage, which is a very cumbersome definition within the zoning bylaw, do some more streamlining, and then also have some more marketable zones that improve the likelihood of these zones being used throughout the city.
Okay. My biggest concern in public consultation, and I know Mr. McIntyre is well aware of this, but is that we speak to the listener. You guys all have the planning ease and the public doesn't. So when you go to explain what RM 1 or 2 or 3 is going to move to, make sure you say right now RM 2 would allow us to do these things. What we're changing to is these things and why we're making the changes. That's really of concern to me, so that people are fully aware of what's in their neighborhood now and how that zone, if that building were to be removed, that it could be improved or not. And that way I think we'll get better consultation. Did anyone, Linda?
Just a quick question. We will get the results of the public hearing as we always do. However, will you also forward to us the other input that you receive in addition to the public hearing input, or will you?
Absolutely. Our intention with this initial public consultation that precedes the public hearing is to include those comments that we receive in the first reading report, so that you get the full set of comments that we hopefully will receive a good set of comments back in this public consultation process.
As we've always done, the same process.
Great.
Okay. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I have some suggestions following up what Councillor Reid had suggested. The more examples that you have, the easier it is for those of us who are not planning people. So if you could say, this building was built with this current zoning, and here's an example of a building, and this is the difference. So make it as literal as possible would be very, very helpful. I'm also curious about how we're going to go. I mean, I can appreciate why the development community would come to this consultation. How are we going to reach out to the general public and make sure that they see this as valuable and worthwhile? Because my concern is that we'll do a public consultation, invite the public like we always do, and nobody shows, other than the developers who I think have the keenest interest in this. And I think it would be in the community's best interest to make sure that we make this, I don't know how to make it sexy, I guess that's, can we make this sexy so that people want to come and see this as having impact in their neighborhood?
Good comments. Part of what the game plan was with regard to the consultation was to send out letters, hopefully to address the concerns that council committee members have identified here with regard to making it simplified and understandable in a letter. And we're targeting UDI, our developer past applicants, as well as the community associations. We're certainly open to other suggestions or other groups that you think are appropriate in terms of who we can target these letters to as part of this consultation process.
I think one of the main groups right now would be the Austin Heights area, because that's where we're going to be in the new Southwest area. And I think people around there are going to be very interested because they're going to have ideas on what they can do with their lands. So we have a recommendation before us. Oh, go ahead.
One more question. In the report, it indicates that we will seek feedback from the multi-family development community. Was there any discussion about also seeking feedback from those other development people that may not be doing multifamily, that may be doing single family, especially up in the Northeast where we've got them literally side by side in a lot of cases?
Mm-hmm. Interesting comment. So if I hear you correctly, the suggestion is to target some of our single-family developers who are adjacent to some of these multifamily sites that might be impacted by these changes to the multifamily zones.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Second? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 3, please.
Item 3 is a report on an application for zoning amendment bylaw 4096. It's a proposed subdivision at 3368 David Avenue. Recommendations to give first reading to bylaw 4096 and that this bylaw and its related application be referred to public hearing.
I'll second. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Regarding environment services, and I'm still so confused about the setback business. So this one, I'm still trying to figure out the difference between the creek and the ditch. We've got a 10-meter setback, but at other times I've seen bigger setbacks and smaller setbacks. And I just want to make sure I understand. So is this recommended by fisheries? Who recommends the setback?
Mr. Hawkins?
Hello, is this working? Can you hear me? The setback is established by the applicant's professional environmental consultant using the
This isn't working.
riparian area regulations criteria. So their consultant analyzes the two water courses and submits a report to the province, and that has been accepted by the province as a 10-meter setback.
Okay, so I'm just going to play this out. So let's say the next property owner hires a different consultant, and that consultant says, well, actually, 5 meters is just fine. So we could have on the same stream, the same creek, we could have on one part a 10-meter setback and on another a 15-meter or 5-meter? Would that be possible?
Not normally, because the water courses are up the same. It's not working. Is that better? Yeah. Sorry. Typically, that wouldn't be the case because the section of this water course is deemed to have the same qualities. So there hasn't been any sort of reductions in the setback along East and West Watkins. So 10 meters is kind of the bare minimum. And I don't believe there would be any other sections that would have a reduced setback or an increased setback.
But someone could, or the next consultant could say, okay, let's go to 15 meters. Like I'm just, because they're different consultants, you could use different consultants. I suspect, I'm married to a consultant, and you get different. You can put 3 consultants in a room, and you get 4 opinions. So I'm just trying to get a sense of this is theoretically that could happen.
If I could, Madam Chair, through to Councillor Robinson, theoretically, I guess anything's possible, but the RAR methodology the qualified environmental professionals follow sets out a framework. And I guess all other things being equal, they should end up with the same conclusions and assessments. And I think by and large, well, I know by and large, that's what we've been seeing across the Northeast. But I think there's one particular case recently where one consultant came up with a different conclusion than the other. It was brought up outside the city, but through the ministry, it was reconciled, and in the end, it was made consistent.
Great, thank you. That's helpful.
There are pretty stringent rules, I think, that they have to follow in their professional designations. Did you have something as well? Okay. So moved, seconded, all in favor, opposed, carried.
Item number 4 is a preliminary rezoning application for a badminton facility at 7 Burbidge Street. It's Bylaw 4098. The recommendation is to give first reading to Bylaw 4098 and that this bylaw and its related application be referred to public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, I have some questions on this one. Here we are. We had a gymnasium facility down in the industrial zone for quite a while, and it created a lot of furor when we first went in there. This, again, is taking a recreational facility and moving it into an industrial area. So I want to make sure that we go far and beyond the notification for the public hearing on this one.
Okay. Do you have...
I think it's important. I think we have a lot of people that are going to be concerned that this would be sort of the thin edge of the wedge, if I may say so. So instead of just doing the 400 meters around, I would suggest we do a few blocks around. If that's okay with my fellow committee members? Okay. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 5 is a preliminary report on application for zoning amendment bylaw number 4095, and it's the 5% park dedication requirements for a proposed subdivision at 1404 Coast Meridian Road. Recommendations to give first reading to bylaw 4095, that bylaw 4095 and its related application be referred to public hearing, and that council require the owner of the proposed subdivision to provide 5% cash in lieu.
Good. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Oh, question? Go
I just
ahead.
have a question. It has to do with the tree replanting that will be carried out at the building permit stage. And I just want to ask the question, do we follow up and make sure that it's been carried out as planned?
Through the chair, yes, we do. There's a schedule for replanting for the northeast residential zones, and there's security that's taken, and there's a inspection, or is a planting, and then there's an inspection point, and then there's a release of securities after that. So there is follow-up in that.
Thank you.
Okay. Did we vote? We did? We didn't. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6.
Item 6 is a consideration of fourth and final reading of rezoning amendment bylaw 4067, 2009 for a proposed subdivision at 1385 Coast Meridian Road. Recommendations that council give fourth and final reading to this bylaw.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 7 is the extension of the approval period for fourth and final reading of zoning amendment bylaw 3991 for a multifamily residential development at 835 Westwood Street. The recommendations that council extend the maximum 12-month approval period for an additional 6-month period.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 8 is a 5% provision of Parkland pursuant to Section 941 of the Local Government Act for the proposed subdivision at 3407 Galloway Avenue. Recommendation from staff is that the owner of the proposed subdivision under file provide 5% cash in lieu to address this provision.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Just on that one, though, if I may, is the lot to the east of this subdivision, I see you sort of have a preliminary road layout here. Is it on the books soon, Mr. McIntyre?
If I could, Madam Chair, direct that either to Erica or to Tom, who've worked more directly with the applicant.
Tom, Erica? We're putting in half a road and half a cul-de-sac.
Actually, the developer is proposing to do a 3/4 road at this time, so they'll be providing more of the road on their development site.
Yeah.
We do have development application on the site to the west.
We do?
Yes.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that because I certainly don't want another wall.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 9.
Item 9 concerns the draft Metro Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy. There's a series of staff recommendations involving that Council advise Metro Vancouver, contingent upon a list of concerns, and 2, that Council resolution in this regard and the staff report be forwarded to all member municipalities of Metro Vancouver.
Okay, your pleasure.
I'll move it.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, do you have a question first? I have a bunch. But
Well, I want to hear what people have to say.
you want to hear what people have to say, so you want me to jump in first, don't you? I can tell both of you. And I can tell, and I can't even see you, but I know this is what's happening.
Do you want to hear my amendment first?
I want to ask why we want to adjust the urban containment boundary to include Westwood. Why do we want them in the urban containment boundary? Is there a reason?
There is, Madam Chair. What was previously the green zone has now been split into 3 different
Understood.
areas.
Yeah, and
so-
they're out because they can't be a green zone.
That's right, and one of those is the recreation or conservation recreation category within what was previously the
Okay,
green
can
zone.
you stop right there? The conservation recreation category now is for those privately owned lands, correct? Vancouver Golf Club, Westwood?
No, not necessarily, and that's the reason
But
staff.
that's where they'd go, is what I mean. That's the pot they'd go into?
Well, we don't fully agree with that. We think that for private lands such as the golf courses, they don't necessarily need to be in that conservation recreation
I agree.
area. They can be within the urban containment boundary,
Okay.
but then they would be dealt with more appropriately through our official community plan, which would differentiate between commercial, residential, parks, golf courses, and so on. So rather than locking into the conservation recreation designation here in the regional plan, we're suggesting it should be contained within that general urban category and leave it to the city of Coquitlam to deal with that through our official community plan and regional context statement, which we have to do in 2 years' time.
Which means that if, I'll say Vancouver Golf Club or Westwood decided they wanted to make it a 10-hole golf course and build something up there, a bigger clubhouse or something, there's only us we have to deal with, because I've sat at Metro and we have to deal with them, and it's unwieldy and absolutely ridiculous. So
That's correct, Madam Chair. That's what we're, and that's why we're making this recommendation. We think there's certain levels of regional planning control that are appropriate, and others that may be getting down a little bit too much into the weeds, and we think this is one to be best left to the city of Coquitlam.
okay, so we're on the same page with these recommendations. Okay, I'm happy to hear that. The active parks, is that for the same reason that we want to have control over our parks and not give it away? Changing the land use designation here?
Madam Chair, the existing green zone in the existing LRSP includes a lot of active parks of small neighborhood size.
Yeah.
We're recommending that those small active-oriented parks not be included in the conservation recreation. And again, as
Again, so our control is...
within, they would continue to be recognized within the official community plan and any the city's zoning regulations.
Okay. Now, getting down to the industrial one, the northeast corner, I guess that would be where Canadian Tire is, correct? Of King Ed and Lougheed? No, it wouldn't. It's Trans-Canada Highway.
Madam
Never
Chair.
mind, I know where you are. Yeah.
Madam Chair, the site is it's the northeast corner of King
Right.
Edward and the Trans-Canada Highway, which is currently owned by TransLink, I believe. So
I
it's
know.
right adjacent
Okay.
to the freeway.
I know which one you mean. Okay. And then Westwood and Dewdney. Okay. And the reason for those is? again, for control for things that we want to do?
Yeah, it's just in terms of, it's more appropriate to be included within the mixed employment designation as opposed to the industrial designation, which may limit the, again, with giving control within the city's official community plan and zoning regulations.
Okay, going on to the industrial, are we satisfied that we've got all the lands that, I'm looking at the Fraser Mills site and that we've got all those lands are excluded now out of the industrial area?
Madam Chair, the only areas that are left within the industrial is the Mayfair Industrial Park. All the other, from Cape Horn through to Pacific Reach, Fraser Mills. Fraser Mills is within called the urban area, so it recognizes the residential uses there.
Okay.
The balance of the areas are within the mixed employment, provides that greater flexibility.
Okay, and my last question on that in the industrial area is the greenway around where the log sorting place is. We have a little park down there, and we were hoping at some future to incorporate from the little park along into a riverside walkway. That's all out now. We don't have to go to them for that.
That's correct. It's reflected within the city's plans.
Okay, and neighborhood centers. Thank you for putting Riverview Hospital in, because someday it's going to be a huge, wonderful place, employing thousands of people. And the Metro Center, I like that. That's really good for the Northeast sector, and hopefully they will look at that favorably. Thank you for all your work. I know how much time this has taken and how much you put into it. Okay, Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. Looking at the schedule of what is to come, this is going to Metro Vancouver for first and second reading, it looks like in March. And so really, I'm suspecting that this is kind of our last kick at the can. So in view of that, I want to make a slight amendment to the recommendation, and that has to do with the words full support for the regional growth strategy is contingent on Metro Vancouver adjusting what you've said in your report. I think it would be a stronger term because I think we either are going to fully approve the regional growth strategy or not. I don't think there's anything in between. And so I think it would send a stronger message to Metro Vancouver if we actually use the word support for the regional growth strategy is contingent on these adjustments being made, as opposed to saying full support is contingent upon it. So I would like to make the amendment just to delete the word full from the recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So on the amendment, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Councillor Reid actually asked, really the only questions that I had was about the industrial lands and where we were at with them and which one were the mixed. So that got clarified in that discussion. So I'm good.
Okay, so back to if this goes down to Metro and we do not get all of these items, A through wherever we are, G, I can read it, then we would not be endorsing the plan. And does this have to be endorsed by everyone 100%?
Madam Chair, at this point, our understanding is that it's a little bit of an ambitious timeline, too. That should be noted. Metro Van is receiving all this feedback from the member municipalities. The deadline's the end of the month. They will be trying to work that into a new revised draft, and by their aspirations, have that out for bylaw form later in the spring, and then if it gets that support of the board and gets referred out to the member municipalities, there's a 120-day review period under the legislation that we have to look at it and get back to them. At the end of the day, they set the bar for adoption is, I believe it's unanimous consent of the members of Metro Vancouver. So it's a very high
I knew it would be high, but I didn't know if it was going to be 2/3, 3/4, or full unanimous, and because there's other cities that are in the same boat we are that want different things. Mr. Steblin, do you know of any difference?
Historically, it has been unanimous.
Okay.
That has been problematic for the region because that is the reason why there's been no changes to the plan for 20 years, because there was always somebody that didn't agree with it. It is their fervent hope that through compromise, that kind of stuff, that they can bring everybody along. If they don't, there will be some interesting discussions, and I would not put it past them to potentially try to soften those rules, and they would need legislative change to do that. So we will be watching that very carefully to ensure that our interests are taken care of through that process.
Thank you. And the reason I'm asking the question is because I've had the fortune or misfortune of being there when someone wanted to actually change something within this. And it used to be that it was unanimous, and then it came down to just majority vote. So that's what I was concerned with.
If I could, Madam Chair, that's right. As Mr. Steblin described, previously, and this is going back to the Liberal Region Strategic Plan, it had a very high bar for acceptance, adoption, and amendment, and that was unanimous. Later, there were some additional amendment ability was introduced. This regional plan actually takes that to a new level. On one hand, you could view it as an improvement, because it does introduce some flexibility. But at this point, we think it's still a little bit complicated. It does allow for amendments of certain types, but each of those amendment processes has a different standard.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all of that, so we're just going to move the recommendation. All in favor, opposed, carried. I just want you to know I walked away with the mayor's book and